This is Decarbonize the World with Frank Deline, solving the climate crisis while increasing profits in your business. Here's Frank.
My guest this week is Steve Glenn, the founder and CEO of Plant Prefab, which is the first home factory in the country focused on sustainable, high-quality urban infill construction. He's also the co-founder and chair of the Sustainable Business Council and has been named the Clean Tech CEO of the Year by Clean Tech Week and the Environmental Entrepreneur of the Year by LA City Council. Steve, welcome to Decarbonize the World.
Thank you.
I can't wait to talk to you about how Plant Prefab is reducing carbon emissions from home building. But how did the journey start for you? When did you become interested in what is now called green building?
Well, I really have to go back to being a kid growing up. The first thing I wanted to be was an architect. I had books on Frank Lloyd Wright and blocks and Legos, and I'd make cities and buildings, and got into technology, which was my first career before I got into doing what I'm doing, but I still thought I might go into design someday. So I did a design program one summer, and I learned there that I really had neither the talent nor temperament to be an architect, unfortunately. But I learned about developers, and one guy in particular, Jim Rouse, who really became one of my first professional role models. By example, I never met him, but Rouse, who was a visionary developer who did some really important work in the U.S., exposed me to two things. First, he helped me to appreciate that if you really care about the quality of the built environment, there are people, as I said, developers are sort of among the best, who are in a position to hire architects and let them do great work or not. So I sort of resolved, well, I want to be in a position someday to hopefully help great architects do great things. But then the second thing I got studying Rouse was he was the first social entrepreneur to whom I was exposed. I was in school in the mid to late 80s, and that there were great social entrepreneurs like Yvonne Chouinard and Ray Anderson and others out there doing great work, but it wasn't yet a popular term. I resolved after studying Rouse, I want to try to wed profit and purpose with what I do with business. So years later, after my first career in tech, mostly at startups, but some big companies too, I felt like it was time to get into real estate. And I concluded that there was a large and growing demand from people like me who really care about design, health, and sustainability for homes that reflect our values. And so that's how I got into it.
You started Living Homes in the early 2000s when most people weren't talking about sustainability. What were those early days like?
Well, we started in 2006, a year and change before the worst real estate downturn since the Great Depression. So obviously had no idea that was going to be happening, that downturn.
Right.
So, the first year was sort of awesome. And then, we got hit with hurricane level headwinds. It was very challenging, kind of 2008 through 2012.
Plant Prefab is the first prefabricated home factory in the nation dedicated to sustainable construction, materials, processes, and operations. How did it all start?
Originally started Living Homes, as you had mentioned, and the focus there was to partner with great world-class architects, introduce LEED platinum level standard homes. LEED is really the leading green building certification program. Platinum is their highest level of certification.
Yes.
And then use outsourced factory production to build what we wanted to build more efficiently. I say outsourced because I came from technology. For example, I worked at Apple at one point. Apple doesn't build almost any of their products. It's all outsourced. It's a different business. Factories, production, different business than product companies. And frankly, the one and only advantage of starting a new real estate company a year and change before the worst real estate downturn since the Great Depression was that the factories to whom we outsourced our work weren't busy, so they took our projects. It was never easy working with them. They were really set up to do different types of homes from what we were doing, but we needed suppliers, they needed customers. We were able to kind of stumble through it. Our first 10 years, we worked with 10 different factories half of whom closed during the downturn. So it was just a
Wow.
really challenging period. Post
Right.
downturn, we got really busy. They got really busy. And we were like, we need a better way. I still didn't feel like we should have our own factories. Again, it's a different business. The big breakthrough came when we were thinking about, all right, how to solve this, because we need a company that's better suited to our needs. The existing guys were building standard, non-sustainable, lower quality, lower cost, basically mobile homes, low cost modular homes. We wanted custom, high quality, really sustainable prefabricator homes. And we realized, oh, wow, if a company existed set up to do that, not only could they solve our needs, but actually much more important from a business model standpoint, they could solve the needs of tens of thousands of individuals and developers across the country who need a better way to build their custom projects. Forget prefab, their site-built custom projects in cities and mountain communities and in second home communities, places where land and labor was expensive and scarce. And more we researched it, we realized, wow, this is actually a bigger plan than living homes. So in 2016, we spun out Plant Prefab, initially
Okay.
as a separate company, but it then became very clear that it was the bigger business. And so Plant, a year later, bought Living Homes. So we're one company. We do design and construction, although frankly, a founding principle of Plant is that we can work with any architect, and that's mostly what we're doing, working with other architects to more efficiently build their custom designs.
I want to talk a little bit about the certification process with the LEED certification. We do that also. We build one-off custom homes, and we in about 2008 we built. It was the largest LEED Platinum home in the country at that time. We scored about 104 points. We actually had a 10-point penalty for the size of the house. So, but when you do prefabricated homes, are you doing a prescriptive specification? Because we had to document every little thing that, to get that certification. The documentation was incredible. But are you able to cut back on that and have it like a prescriptive specification accepted by the USGBC?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Let me assume what you're saying is, can one apply with the USGBC for standard certification for standard homes you're doing? And the answer is yes.
Correct.
They have
Correct.
for production builders. I mean, really anybody, but if you're going to build the same kind of home again and again, they will review it when you build it, certify it, and then they have a process for making the subsequent certification of the same models dramatically easier. We do have standard homes, and yes, we could do that, but we never have. The vast majority of what we build are custom. However, we have standard finishes, fixtures, environmental systems, and we, of course, and we've had over 30 homes certified, mostly platinum and some gold. And so we, including the first home ever to be certified LEED Platinum in the history of the program. So we sort of know the gig. We know how to kind of do this pretty efficiently.
As a builder, I'm fascinated. Can you tell me a little bit more about your patented building system that delivers low-cost homes in half the time with less waste?
Yeah, so it's called the Plant Building System. So it turns out in prefab, there are two major building systems, modules and panels, and both have certain advantages and disadvantages. And any company you've heard of in the prefab space does one or the other. There's a couple that do 3D printing, but that's a very small space currently. So modules are great because you can build in parallel to your site work, so you can save a lot of time, potentially lower cost because the labor rates where you build, which is to say your factory, may be less than the labor rates for the project sites. So those are all great advantages. The downside of modules are they're very expensive to ship, and there's a lot of redundant structure. And so it's hard for some folks, particularly the multifamily folks who in general are looking to max out number of units on site, the floor plan per unit. it's sometimes harder for those folks to use modules because of all that redundant structure. So they often use panels, less redundant structure, easier to solve, a lot of design problems as a result. And they ship flat, so super efficient to ship. But the downside of panels, kind of the leading system is a SIP, structural insulated panel, but you still have to do electrical, plumbing, cladding, drywall, paint. If it's kitchen or bath, your millwork, your tiles, your appliances. So all that work that I just mentioned or alluded to shifts back on site. But our market are places where that labor is the most expensive and most scarce. Right. So we designed and constructed and issued patent, a new kind of panel. We're building it with some limited automation currently with our new factory, a very high degree of automation, and we're integrating it with specialized modules for kitchens, baths, utility cores, in other words, the expensive parts of the home. So now we have a hybrid system. We're unique in the industry with that offers more design flexibility, construction cost efficiency, and transportation efficiency and flexibility.
That's very interesting. Well, hang on, Steve. We have to stop here. But coming up in the second part of my conversation with Steve Glenn, the founder and CEO of Plant Prefab, Steve talks about the dynamic between his company and architects.
We want to empower them by giving them and frankly their clients a better way. And what's better, faster, lower cost, more sustainable, healthier, higher quality, ideally some combination of all that. We'll be able to get more great architecture built.
This has been Decarbonize the World with Frank Deline. To connect with Frank and to learn more about clean energy, reducing fossil fuels, and increasing profits, go to frankdeline.com. Decarbonize the World is a production of Advantage Audio.